tennis worldwide. Half the professional players actually do not make money every year because there's a lot of cost involved in them going and participating in tournaments. We kind of have been able to integrate all of these things, and we have an incredible set of people who bring those skills and not have a very strong, let's say, professional sports culture for quite a while. Also based on what capacity stadium are we getting. Although having said that, the gate receipts are a very small portion of the IPL. So,
hello viewers, welcome back to the latest episode on GIBS IRE Talks podcast powered by GIBS Business School, a place where innovation meets inspiration. This is Professor Guru Prasad, the host for today. Well, you all know sports is one of the huge industry, the big industry, not just in India, but across the globe. At the same time, I'm an academician. From the education front, I always see this as a bigger challenge in terms of sports management education. So to deliberate on this, I'm more excited to launch this podcast on the sports management related to education. And I have with me today Mr. Tareque Laskar, who is a part of the ITW Consulting, a leading brand in India. On behalf of all the viewers, let me extend a heartfelt welcome to you. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I would say this is the most unique subject, and in my introductory remark, I said that we had a series of podcasts and varieties, but this is for the first time something on sports management, and I, being myself a sports fan, I'm quite excited to this. Before I get into this, Tareque, can you please tell us about your life, your upbringing, your back school days and college days before?
Right. So I was born in a very small town in Assam, and I grew up. Up till my graduation, I was there, and basically, I was mostly a relatively introverted child who would mostly do things by themselves. Did not have a lot of friends growing up. Obviously, you sort of had friends at school, but not as many around all the time. And we grew up so I have a younger sister, and most of my time was spent daydreaming about sports one way or another. So, whether it's playing in the backyard, because as a child, when you see, things on television, you kind of get influenced by that. So
absolutely.
My father was a cricket player at university, and he was a huge cricket fan.
Wow.
So he would sort of make us watch everything, including like test matches. And that is where I think we got the bug from. And then as I was growing up, around the time I was sort of graduating high school, is when ESPN came to India, and it brought with it, so obviously all the cricket programming and the India-centric programming, but they also had a block where they would just play whatever was playing on the American network.
Right.
So, I also got hooked to all the American sports as well. And one interesting thing about any American sport that you see is that, you see the entire ecosystem, the business around it, and it's very fascinatingly packaged.
True.
And I kind of got interested in sort of seeing it. How are they doing this? Like, why is it so interesting? So I kind of used to follow all the four major American sports at a time when nobody else even had an idea they existed.
True.
So it was very difficult to talk at school about it. But so that's how the bug kind of has remained with me throughout. Following major sporting events like your Olympics and Asian Games and things like that.
True.
Wanting to know more about that. So basically the curiosity took over.
Right.
And as I went along, so after graduation, I did my MBA and then sort of entered the domain of business management. But at the back of my mind, somewhere there was like a sports thing always going. So even when I went to the doctoral program at Fox School of Business, one of the first papers we did, I think, was a seminar on organizational theory. So we used to call it the OT seminar, and you had to submit an idea for a paper.
Okay.
And I remember my professor was a Korean professor to whom I submitted an idea for a paper about linking one of the subjects in OT to baseball teams in the US.
Wow.
So initially he said, I'm not sure, would you be able to do this? I don't see how you're going to pilot this into a possible paper proposal.
Right.
As it happens, by the end of the term, I'm very proud to say that he gave me an A because he thought that it's an interesting enough case to be sort of can be researched or pursued. So those sort of experiences have given me the idea that sport is something that's always in the back of my mind, whatever I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm guilty of sort of like bringing sports references in almost anything anyone is talking about. Or sometimes if I'm in a classroom, sometimes if I'm talking to colleagues in the office. So I guess those are things that kind of led me down this path where when I came back from the US, I happened to know one of the co-founders of ITW, that was Bhairav. He used to be my student back in the day when I was teaching at IIPM as a young graduate. They were one of the first batches here in Bangalore. So we go back a long way that way. And they had started this company in 2011, I think. And around 2016, he said, "Would you want to, help contribute something to this?" So I said, "I have no idea what can we contribute." So he said, "No, we are kind of moving into consulting, and we sort of want to understand the sports management business better. So we should position ourselves as thought leaders, but we sort of need a push in terms of understanding the industry to be able to do that." And all those discussions finally led us to sort of start this research division in 2019.
Lovely.
And here we are in one sense.
Lovely. I mean, the journey has been incredible. Tell us something about ITW, because anyone who talks about sports management, they definitely know about this company.
Right. So ITW, like I was saying, we are not a company that's very old because it's just over a decade or a bit. So 2011 is when it started.
Yes.
And essentially it started because Bhairav and the other co-founders saw that basically the sports marketing arena in India was very sort of unorganized, very ad hoc.
Yes.
There were so many innovations happening across the world. Let's say from LED signboards being kept inside stadiums to digital ways of reaching out to fans and things like that. But in India, we're kind of still stuck at those static advertising boards inside the stadium. The broadcasters were not experimenting with different kinds of things that you could do on air. So all sorts of things. So they're sort of bubbling with those ideas. And they said, "Oh, how do we sort of make a dent and sort of bring Indian sport into, particularly the sports consulting marketing arena into this new age? Because everybody is doing new stuff. So why are we not doing new stuff here? Where cricket, for example, is such a huge game." So that's how they started, and they started at the bottom of the value chain in terms of we did not have any rights of our own, any specific business of our own. We were basically resellers for others. That's where it started from. And then we've kind of gone up the value chain where we have now sort of bought up our own rights, which we are repackaging and selling. We are going to broadcasters and giving them ideas of things that they can do, features that they can introduce to enhance the broadcast and integrate marketing, how to make it more efficient, more valuable for any brand to be associated with a sport. So fundamentally, where it all stems from is that sports is a great platform. It's an amazing platform for doing a lot of things.
Yes.
And primarily that doing a lot of things comes down to reaching a huge number of people. And naturally, brands then look at that and think, "Oh, great. So that means a lot of those people might also be my customers or potential customers. So how can I talk to them?" It had been one-way traffic for a long time, which is basically that the brand was put in front of you and by chance you might get to notice it.
Right.
Which is how placement in sports was
exactly
like. But then we have sort of been on this journey to try and bring interactivity and freshness to that idea. Not to say that we are the only ones doing it. There are obviously other agencies in India and of course around the world who have been part of this entire revolution. But where we feel that we have sort of positioned ourselves well is that we kind of have been able to integrate all of these things, and we have an incredible set of people who bring those skills to be able to provide all those services under one umbrella under
Yes.
under one roof. And that integration sort of gives the power that a brand can
Right.
do like 5 different things with the same event, and thus sort of deliver better returns in terms of what they're trying to do by associating with sport.
Tariq, if I'm right, we have seen two phases of Indian sports. One is before technology. You spoke about mid of 90s, and you spoke about, and now we are witnessing something after technology has been introduced in sports analytics and all that. How do you see India doing in sports management domain? Are we meeting the international standards?
I mean, interesting question, honestly, because you are right that we've sort of seen the evolution from, and I've been a big sports consumer in some senses,
Right.
From I think you and I were talking about just before we went live about Sports Star and the
Exactly.
shared love for
I'm a big fan of it.
Sports Star as a magazine. So,
Yes.
and that is a great example that back when I was a teenager, with my first scholarship money, that was the first magazine I
Yes.
got, and I would look forward every fortnight to sort of reading it in print. And then obviously we've had this journey where I still read Sports Star stuff. I still, I know people at Sports Star. I'm good friends with a few of the writers there, of the younger crop.
Wow.
But I mostly read them online.
Right.
And obviously that, in a nutshell, covers the whole journey of
Absolutely.
sport itself.
Correct.
So, in terms of where we are as India and in terms of sports management, I think the Western markets are mostly way more evolved.
Is it?
Both in terms of how they treat sports rights, what they do with those kind of rights that are available or the possibilities that are available, and it's way more professionalized. So where the opportunity lies, I would say, with India, is that all these things are going to get professionalized even further now. We did not have a very strong, let's say, professional sports culture for quite a while. But I think over the last 10 or 15 years, the key change that has happened, and it's not just cricket, in fact, in some of the other sports also we have seen it,
Right.
that it has become way more professionalized. And the more professionals you get into, on the playing side, then you need professionals also to handle the outside of the ecosystem, which is, packaging those things, selling that from broadcast to, branding to endorsements to whatever else. And that is where the gap is, or that is where the potential is, especially in terms of sports management, because you need trained professionals in all these areas.
Absolutely.
So whether it's operations, because there you need a certain kind of training, or it's marketing.
So do we have a scarcity of these trained professionals? What do you mention?
I would say our management sector is fairly vibrant. So it's not that we lack people who have sort of these skills.
Okay.
So for example, if I'm talking about operational skills or even management skills,
Right.
we have a lot of those people.
Okay.
I think what we are not seeing yet, or where the possible success metric lies, is when the passion for sport and their skill set and their interest in that particular area combine, and those then can become sort of like world-beating professionals.
Right.
And it's interesting because even when I look around at my colleagues who are there at ITW, and they're obviously all professionals in this domain. So a lot of them come from the traditional sectors, like, for example, somebody comes from a broadcaster, somebody comes from TV ad sales, somebody comes from an advertising agency, somebody comes from a legal background, but having worked with, let's say, a sports law firm. And the one thing that binds them and one thing that makes them such high-performing individuals who have, sort of contributed to the success of the organization, is the fact that all of them are very passionate about sport.
Right.
So we don't necessarily use that as a recruitment criteria, but we find that it's sort of part of the DNA and the culture that even if somebody wasn't, once they are inside the system, they find it very hard to escape. And so I think that sort of bring out the true potential of sports management. That we obviously have the wherewithal, the know-how, and the basic skill set among students who are around. It's just a question of that curiosity and interest in sport, and then we are on our way. I'd say.
Absolutely. As a sports enthusiast, Tariq, I have a concern is that when you mention sports in India, generally people talk only about cricket. We hardly see people talking about football. Okay, these days Gen 21, they're talking about it. But otherwise, I feel a great mismatch. Nobody talks about badminton. Nobody talks about kabaddi or so on. Nobody talks about the talent that we have in terms of participating ourselves in the Olympics. Though the results of late has been great. So, what's your thought on this? I mean, we are a 142 crore size population, and we can do wonders in all types of sports. So, why is just cricket in India?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think there are very few other, or there are none, honestly, countries of our size of the population who are effectively a one sports nation. So, even if you look at Brazil and you say, "Oh, Brazilians are like crazy about football," and they indeed are. Of course, they are like hugely passionate about it.
True.
But there are so many other sports that are also thriving ecosystems.
Right.
They're great at volleyball, they're great at beach volleyball,
they are.
And so on. So I think what has happened with India is that we have not had as much of a grassroots culture. So the US, for example, has a great collegiate sports system. So one way or another, there are many different kinds of sports that get support at the college level, and the interest in those sports, even at the college level, is humongous. So their women's football team, or they would say soccer team, is great because at the collegiate level, there are so many of them who are playing that game. There are so many people who are coming to see them play those games, especially the elite universities.
Right.
And you're able to then scout talent from there and put together a national team that is achieving great things. In India, I feel that cricket overpowers the larger discussion because it has sort of become like a social fabric as well. And while the rest of the sports have their own ecosystems, in relative size, it obviously appears small. Because, like you mentioned, that if you're talking about 140 crore people, that's a lot. And even if 1% of them are talking about, sort of, let's say, badminton, for example, you are already talking about 1.4 crore people, which, like 14 million, any other country would give an arm and a leg for.
I know.
Like 14 million enthusiasts, right?
True.
So that way, I feel it's a question of what you can see. So for a long time, other sports have not been as visible. So I guess we are now on our way where this visibility problem is sort of slowly getting sorted.
How do you rate infrastructure?
Infra, I think we are definitely still behind. Primarily because, again, it's a question of it's a mixture of many factors. Culture and all that obviously is one of them, but the other is that a lot of original drives of infrastructure or drivers of infrastructure in Indian sport was central planning and bureaucracy.
Right.
And while that has worked for some time,
yes,
we hosted like the first Asian Games.
Absolutely.
And obviously there was a push towards it. It's sort of incorporated in our directive principles and things like that. Also, it's not that it does not find a mention.
Right.
But since then, it has not gotten out of that era when the new era has come in, where sort of you have a Sports Authority of India and facilities of Sports Authority of India, but bureaucracy is holding a lot of them back. So what we ideally need now is infrastructure that doesn't necessarily need to be centrally or government driven, because it has to be a bottoms up approach. And that is where you sort of create this niche of passionate followers, because you only need a few million passionate followers to create a niche big enough to produce potential champions.
Absolutely.
And we have seen that with some of the Olympic success stories that you have seen. So,
what is your views on talent acquisition? Because we found a lot of talents, especially at the rural level, I would say. What they lack is the platform. What do you say on that?
Well, I mean, honestly, yes, they do. And the lack of the platform primarily is because there are not enough platforms. So it's again, with sports, especially when we discuss the economics of sports, we always discuss this fact that it's a bit of a pyramid system, right? That there are lots of people who have aspirations at the bottom, but eventually you have to, jump through a lot of hoops and go through many levels to reach that level where you are finally able to actually look at sport as a viable career, and you have enough support to be able to do that.
Yes.
Like even in professional tennis worldwide, half the professional players actually do not make money every year because there's a lot of cost involved in them going and participating in tournaments.
You're right.
So similarly with talent that you could spot, I think we don't have enough programs for the time being to give them sort of this safety net.
True.
That this is what will support you with you focus on, just honing your talent, becoming world class. Maybe we get you to participate in whatever events, and the realization that even if you're able to scout 100 people, eventually not all of them may be successful at the world level, but some of them might be. So, for example, in how is let's say Korea different than India? That there is a huge corporate participation from the very beginning in terms of supporting athletes. So you would always find that those athletes that you see, whether it's in archery or any of the other sports Korea excels at, if somebody is working at a Hyundai or somebody is working at some other Korean firm, maybe even a Samsung, where they're being supported through that from the beginning. So that it needs to spread.
My next question was that only, actually. You're a part of a company, ITW, which is also closely connected with the corporates, consultancies and all that. So how do you see the role of corporate sponsorships and investment shaping, the future of Indian sports?
Right. Great question. So I think there are three things to consider here. Number one is the history of the idea of sponsorship itself and corporate involvement in sports itself.
Right.
I read this fascinating story about how when the Olympics were held for the first time in Japan, in Tokyo in '64, their volleyball team was one of the best, the women's volleyball team.
Okay.
Now, these women's volleyball team was basically workers who were working at textile factories who were supported by those factories, and they would sort of practice after that. And because of the support they got in terms of the facilities and they're obviously driving them very hard as well because they were working like full work days. Then they had like practice in the evening and all that. And the team was expected to win gold, and they had a huge levels of expectations, and they delivered and they won the gold. But after that, the Japanese textile sector kind of collapsed and went away because Japan moved into higher tech industries, textile and all that, was accepted, as by most of the other Southeast Asian countries. And Japan kind of fell off the map in terms of volleyball for a while. Till it kind of rebounded. So support comes in three ways. One is that you could consider, a level of philanthropy that in India, I think under the CSR law, corporates can support sporting programs as part of their CSR spends, as long as they are not primarily in the business of sport. So that's one area which I think not enough corporates are doing yet. It might be driven by one or two where they have people who are passionate about sport and they want to push it. The second is that the trend that you are seeing now, which I hope becomes more of a reality, and I'm not just saying that because we run a sports consulting firm who could get business out of that, but also because that is what the Korea model is like, or that is what a lot of the other models are like, which is corporates themselves having their own sports programs in terms of selecting athletes and putting them into a program which they would support, and from a commercial perspective, and also look at supporting those athletes once they become professional as well. So that's obviously number two. And number three is your traditional sponsorship route, which is sort of helping other sports sustain themselves by giving them the commercial backing. That, I'm corporate X, and I would go and say, I'm going to sponsor a football tournament, or I'm going to sponsor your table tennis tournament. But not just because it's philanthropy that I'm doing, but because I know that there is a set of people who is watching.
So I want to give a platform as well.
It's my platform to reach those people as
Absolutely.
well. So it's quid pro quo that there is something that I'm gaining, but at the same time, the sports ecosystem remains healthy as well. So I guess it then becomes sensitizing the businesses to these ideas, and that's where also things like the sports management professionals role comes in, which is to give that larger picture and the context setting of that how you can support sport. Because right now I think there is very little education about it among people in the corporates who are making those decisions, because obviously it has to go to those who are setting the budgets,
True.
who are making those calls, and and naturally they would ask about ROI and strategic goals
Yes.
and things like that. So you have to frame it that way and be able to deliver.
Great. It's been 18 seasons of IPL now. IPL has been, I don't say talk of the town, talk of the globe. Everyone knows about IPL, but I don't think not many knows about the IPL economics. So can you throw some light on the IPL economics? Everyone knows that there's a whooping money there,
Right.
but not exactly the clarity on how the economics works.
There is, of course. So again, IPL is a event we closely work with.
Right.
We've done a lot of work, both in terms of understanding the value of the ecosystem and all that. So the basics of the IPL economics is, number one, that it's sort of a closed system in the sense that it's a very exclusive club. You've got these 8 franchises and now 10. As you may recall, like when they were adding the other 2 firms, the other 2 franchises, the bidding was absolutely crazy.
Yes, it was.
And the bidding went close to like $1 billion.
Absolutely.
To acquire a team.
7,300 crores, something, if I'm right.
Yeah. So
whooping.
so which was huge. And the reason for that is the economics, which is that because it's a closed system, the source of revenue for anybody who's part of it, the franchise who's part of it, is twofold. One is that they are getting a cut from the media rights that the BCCI sells because they are packaging and producing this whole tournament. And this whole tournament is humongously popular,
right,
as you rightly said.
Yes.
And it has, honestly, globally, it has an audience next only to the Football World Cup. So every single year, it's a huge audience. So naturally, broadcasters find this particular property very, very valuable, which is why, as you may recall, again in 2022, when the media rights were sold for the next cycle,
yes,
they went for some $6.5 billion almost.
Right.
So digital and TV media rights combined. So obviously, those monies are already committed by the broadcasters. So that's already sure shot revenue that is coming to the BCCI. The BCCI is keeping half of that, and then the other half is being distributed among the franchises. So even if the franchise is not doing that well in terms of the how they're performing in the tournament, they're still guaranteed sort of a stream of income. So that's one source of the income. The other source obviously is sponsorships. Sponsorship both at the franchise level. So if I'm Mumbai Indians, I could go and sign a brand and I could earn money from that. And there are also brands which are associating with the IPL at the tournament level, or as we call it, the central level.
Right.
So like a Tata and Tata
Yes.
saying Tata IPL, all
Right.
that. So there is a cut of that revenue also that obviously the BCCI is keeping, and the rest is being passed on to the franchises as part of the agreement that they have.
Does even sharing with the seats that gets sold in the stadium?
Yes, so that is for all the home games.
Okay.
The home franchise has the rights to the ticket sales.
All right.
I think they give away about 20% of that to the BCCI, and a certain percentage of it to the home state association, because obviously.
Wow. You can opt a team of a particular franchisee which has the largest stadium in India. Like, for example, currently it's Eden Gardens and the one in Gujarat, if I'm right.
Yeah.
It has a huge capacity.
Yeah, it has a huge capacity. So that was why when the 2 new franchises were being added, they were given a choice of what cities would you like to select.
Okay.
And a lot of the calculation on how much the bid should be was also based on what capacity stadium are we getting. Although having said that, the gate receipts are a very small portion of the IPL. So basically, when you compare IPL with, let's say, European football leagues and things like that. So in European football leagues, also for most clubs and everybody, the major earning heads are the media rights and the gate receipts. But there, the split could be closer to, let's say, 40% from media rights and let's say 30% from gate receipts or something like that. Whereas in the IPL, a majority of it is from the media rights. So for an individual franchise, almost 70% of their revenue would come from the cut they're getting from media rights.
Okay.
And about 15 to 20% from the sponsorships that they raise. And then the rest are your gate receipts and things like that. So it's a relatively smaller part of the pie, which is also why during the COVID years when they were held behind closed doors,
True.
they kind of realized that we're still getting the same viewership. So it's the TV viewership that is sort of driving all the value. So that's the revenue side. And on the cost side, they mostly have obviously the purse, the player payments,
that will be there,
and other infrastructure and travel and other basic management costs.
How are the balance sheets of these franchises? It's all green?
Well, incidentally, for most of the existing franchises, the eight franchises which are there, they so when you buy a team, the license fee you have to pay for 10 years only.
Right.
After that, it's just 20% of the gross revenue that you earn as a franchise that you have to kind of share with the BCCI. The rest is yours. So most of the franchises are definitely in the green, break even and better. In fact, I think Chennai and Mumbai and even the Rajasthan Royals are doing fairly well. Chennai, in fact, it's not a listed franchise yet, but in the grey market, it's one of the most sought after shares.
I know.
Because everybody knows that this is a profitable company.
Yeah.
And with the media rights value increasing, because when the last one happened, it was 2 times the value of what the previous media rights were.
Wow.
So your revenue immediately doubles.
Absolutely.
You did not even have to do anything. Well, to be fair, they have established the product by being the guys who are producing the content that is making this so.
True.
But I think almost all of them are, as far as I know. Obviously, they don't publish their accounts, but oftentimes they'll release revenue details. And we've sort of reviewed some of them through their internal financial documents and all that. So I would say probably currently about 8 out of 10 are. The other 2, your Gujarat and all that, will turn profitable soon, but currently their drag is that they have to pay that license fee.
True.
So, those are upfront costs that
I got it. So before we end, Tareque, I'm happy that education institutions these days started exploring this domain. There are many, of course, abroad, but India of late, I find a lot of universities now tapping this program. So is GIBS. We definitely have this vision of having the sports management program one day. How do you see it? How do you see the combination of education and sports management in general?
I think it's a very interesting combination. So, like I said, that when we were talking earlier about the fact that what you need is that crossroads of where the passion for sports kind of meets the skill and knowledge and the inclination somebody has for management. And that's where you hone like great professionals who would sort of change the landscape. So that's where I see the value of programs like these, which sort of institutionally or in a sort of organized manner would be able to do that. Because right now you are mostly relying on somebody's individual passion for sport. And for example, even we as an organization have been lucky to find some people like that.
True.
On which we have built a great business. But if I have to scale this business up, if I have to move forward in this industry or do new things, then we need even more trained professionals. So, we are entering it's sort of like what happened with the aviation industry once you enter like the jet age, that you need like skilled pilots to sort of fly your planes. But those pilots now need to know about a lot more, because they need to know about technology, about computers, and not just flying. They need to, understand maybe customer service. They need to understand operations.
True.
And it's the same thing with sports. Correct. That we have now entered a very turbocharged, like supercharged era of sports where everybody now has recognized that the business is big. Earlier, it used to be a very small cabal of people who understood sports business at all.
True.
Now it's more democratized.
Right.
And that's where you need those professionals to come in and take those chances. So that's why I'm very optimistic and bullish about this area in general.
Lovely.
That this is something which is the next generation career or profession.
It's going to be. I'm very optimistic on that. Well, Tareque, there are a lot of young aspirants watching you. Any messages for them?
I would go back to where we started from. That I think the two things that have driven me, and I've been privileged enough to, land myself in a position where I find that I do something which I'm passionate about and interested in, and get to do something new every day, which is sort of exciting. Is that one? If you have a passion, so not to necessarily always think of, oh, can I like turn this into a career or will something come out of it? You just go all in with the passion as much as you can, as much as you can balance it. And the number two thing I would say is curiosity. That do not stop at anything where you look at something and say, okay, that's all right. Because if it catches your attention or if you're interested in it, I would say dig deeper, be curious, or as I sometimes say at my quiz programs, that stay curious, because that's sort of the only way to find a lot of other things. I use my own example that a lot of the things we found out. I mean, every day at ITW we do things where we have no idea that what this is about, but we ask ourselves, "Hey, fine. Right now we don't have an idea. By end of day, we should have found out."
Sure. Lovely. That's a great message. I think I would say we are end of this, what I call a fabulous session, a very unique session. Personally, I was waiting for a very long time to have a discussion on this. I'm so happy that you were able to be a part of this podcast. On behalf of all my viewers, I extend my heartful thanks to you for being
Thank you.
the part of the show.
Pleasure being here.
So before you end, do not forget to like our pages on the social media platform, GIBS Business School, GIBS IRE Talks. And of course, all the sports enthusiast people out there, please follow Tareque. I mean, that's a great source of inspiration. He is no doubt about it. And yes, thanks for watching. And this is Guru Prasad signing off now. Thank you.